Welcome to Friday Mornings for Lauderdale. It's our 8th Friday morning now. First of all, I want to thank all of you for making it here to our Greenberg kitchen. After rotating from Access to here, Broward College, it's been a really nice setup over here. Good weather today, so it's a good day. I want to thank our sponsors, Access Space, Creative Some Call.
Happy birthday, Access!
Creative Some Call. To use the hashtags today for Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, hashtag Creative Mornings and hashtag CMFTL if you want to use it for your posts. Today, this month's theme is ethics, so it's going to be really exciting about it. We're right now already 132 cities, so 2 more cities in addition, so it's a really great movement. Thanks Greenberg Kitchen for that amazing
Actually, I wanted to let everyone know all of our pastries is from our new location, Green Bar Express. That's where our vegan bakery is at. So hopefully everyone enjoyed all the delicious devil dogs and cinnamon buns. Who doesn't like that, right? So that comes from our new location, the Green Bar Test Kitchen on the Gulf Ocean Mile.
Awesome. Thank you, Lane.
Thank you guys. Enjoy.
For that amazing coffee, thanks go where our guys
They're inside.
Okay.
They're the best.
And our Great Mornings partners. Also our amazing photographer, Nathan. Where's Nathan? Thank you, Nathan. And Alex, our videographer there. And also our amazing team, Michelle, Steve, Don. Where's everybody? Raise your hands. And now from Code Fever, she's going to speak about ethics and startups, and it's Felicia Hatcher.
Good morning. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Oh, y'all can do better than that. How are you doing? Just good, that's it? Not like great or freaking fantastic, like nothing? Okay, so my name is Felicia Hatcher. I am the co-founder of an organization called Code Fever, which is essentially a coding and startup school really focused on getting the African American and Caribbean community here in South Florida engaged in the startup ecosystem and ultimately the innovation economy here in South Florida. And we also run a big emerging kind of technology week called Black Tech Week that is next week, that if I had hair, my hair would be gone because it's that crazy, but it's also just that fantastic, and we're really looking forward to that week. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about ethos and ethics and kind of company culture and what I like to call immutable laws, and just some of my experience of running a food company for 7 years, the good, the bad, the ugly that came along with that, some of the work that we're doing with Code Fever, and I think how that relates to kind of the startup ecosystem overall, from the major technology companies to the startups, and kind of the ethics around diversity and inclusion and what that really means for innovation as well. So to tell you a little bit about myself, I got married at a donut shop in Portland, Oregon 6 years ago. So I love desserts, yeah. If you've ever watched the Food Network, Voodoo Donuts, like one of the top places to visit in Portland, Oregon. I got married there. I eloped after trying to plan a wedding, living in Minneapolis and trying to plan a wedding in Florida for 2 years unsuccessfully. We just said, you know what, we're just going to go to Voodoo Donuts and get married. And my parents weren't too happy about that, and neither was my grandmother, but I had the best time of my life. And then after I got married, I went and did laundry. So that was like just a fun experience. But I love desserts. And when I say I love desserts, I just love desserts. And so I started a gourmet popsicle manufacturing company 7 years ago. that produce all organic and natural ingredient, vegan-friendly gourmet popsicles, as well as a line of alcohol pops that we call Boozy Pops. And just an insane experience. I like to tell people I literally fell into the business. Because I literally fell into the business, falling down, chasing after an ice cream truck in heels. 9 years ago, that was my Oprah aha moment. Like, one, I'm way too old to chase after an ice cream truck. And two, why doesn't anyone come up with like a cooler way for adults to enjoy ice cream? I was kind of on the ground for a long time, with those thoughts. But that was like, the idea kind of sparked that Oprah aha moment, like, hey, I should do something about this. And I like to tell people that sometimes a good paying job stands in the way of you following your dreams just as much as a bad paying job. And at the time, I absolutely loved my job. I was doing marketing and product launch for Nintendo, and it was a fantastic job. But there were some certain compromises that I had to make that I wasn't completely comfortable making, especially as you go year by year. But again, it was a good paying job. And I had this idea that I couldn't let go of doing something around desserts and popsicles. But I had zero, and I mean zero, food experience, except for I worked at McDonald's when I was 16. So I'd like to give a lot of credit for them allowing me to like pull the ice cream lever down as far as my food experience. But that was it. So when you talk about building, kind of following your passion and trying to align all the things that are necessary in order to actually make that happen, I literally had none of that. I really didn't have any money. I definitely didn't have any experience. But I just had this idea that I could not let go of. And I was just determined to be scrappy and gritty and just figure out how to make it happen. And that's how Feverish was essentially born. I was born in my parents' backyard with less than $2,000. And a lot of money that I spent on Craigslist, like just finding the most random stuff in order to build this idea, or at least test the idea before I could just say, you know what, it's definitely not for me. And what happened for me, which at the time I felt was very unfortunate, but ended up being probably one of the biggest blessings, is the economic downturn in 2008. When the economy crashed, I lost my job. And it was the push that I needed to say, hey, move back to Florida and to see where this idea is going to go. A lot of experimenting, a lot of horrible flavors, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of my parents have always been supportive of my passions and my brother. My brother's a stand-up comedian. But they had this look in their eye when I pulled up to their house with this 35-year-old ice cream truck that I bought off Craigslist that was like, okay, but we're worried about our daughter's future. What is she doing with her life? What is her plan? And just to make a long story short, we had just so many interesting experiences starting this company and continuing to start this company. And I want to share a really quick story with you because it really shaped how our business model essentially moved forward. And, we weren't the neighborhood ice cream truck. I didn't want to compete with that because it was crazy and cutthroat like you would never believe. But we realized that the adult market was completely open. And this was before the food trucks and the gourmet food trucks and all that stuff really popped off. And so I have this ice cream truck. I get this call from Tyco, and they wanted us to do their Christmas party. And we were just getting started. We had never catered an event before. And they wanted it for 500 of their employees. And I was like, yeah, we can definitely do that. We've been in business for a long time, we can make that happen because as entrepreneurs, you make shit happen, right? You just have to. You have no other choice. And, she called me and she was just like, okay, so what do you need in order to make this happen? You need a deposit, whatever. Yes, of course, we need a deposit, yes. And do you take credit card? And this is before Square and all this stuff. I'm like, let me talk to my partner and we'll get back to you. And then in the process, you go and figure it out, right? And we figured it out. And so I bought this ice cream truck off of Craigslist, right? And it was working just fine until the day before the event. And it would not turn on for the life of me. Or it would drive and then it would stop, right? So it would go short distances. And I'm like, we just spent the deposit. We got to figure out what we're going to do. We just have to get it there, right? So at the time I was in Delray the event was in Jupiter. So I'm like, I'm gonna put my entrepreneur hat on because we're all about solving problems, and we're just gonna tow it there because it will drive short distances. So we put this truck, filled it up with ice cream, and we put the truck on a tow truck and drive it to Jupiter. So as we get there, our contact was like, actually, we want you to stop at 2 different offices. So we're like, okay. So we go to the first office, we take the truck off the tow truck, we do the event, we drive it to the short distance, and it works just fine. And we load it back up on the tow truck, and mind you, the tow truck driver was just like the bomb, like he was really working with us. I'm sure he was probably laughing at us like, what are these crazy people doing? We loaded up onto the tow truck, we decided we're heading to the next event. So the tow truck drops us off, and remember, the truck drives short distances. So all we had to do was make like a right turn, and we would have been exactly where we needed to be. And a semi rolls by and stops, so it's blocking us from making that right turn. So we're waiting for the semi to continue moving, and in the interim of that, the company makes the announcement for all of their employees to come outside to get the ice cream, because we're supposed to be serving. And the truck stops, and it will not cut on. And we're freaking out. And remember, this was my idea of starting this gourmet popsicle company. I was taking my husband along for the ride. And so we were saying all kind of words that I can't repeat today. It was like, this is just like, I'll sum it up as, this is the worst idea ever. And we're like freaking out, and we're trying to do everything we possibly can to get this truck working. And we see all these people looking at us like, why won't they come over? And the VP of the company comes and walks up to the truck and like, what the heck is going on? And we had to tell him like, hey, the truck won't work. And he takes his blazer off, throws it into the car. He tells me to get back in the driver's seat, put the car in neutral, and him and my husband literally push the truck to where it needs to go, right? Talk about mortified, just like, I'm done with this idea. This is the craziest idea ever. Like, who does this, right? And so for the next like 2 hours, I'm literally like almost in tears. My husband is like through with the ice cream world, period. He's like, I'm done. And we served the ice cream, and for the next 6 years, that company was our client every single year. And they were just like, anybody else would have just like given up and just been like, screw this, but you guys kept through it. You kept, really high spirits. And it was that one moment where I was just like, I'm done. Like, this is a dumb idea. I've tried this MVP through Craigslist and it's just not working. I need to get out of this business and figure out something else. And that was one of the biggest hurdles for us. But there was also kind of one of the biggest kind of areas of innovation for how we were running our business, because we didn't want to do sale by sale of one person, two person, and just kind of be on a street corner. We realized that serving our company, our clients from either a catering standpoint or a marketing partnership standpoint really worked well for our business. But I could have stopped that day. And I think I would have been fine in all my right mind to stop that day, because it was just that crazy of trying to be a scrappy entrepreneur and just figure things out on a limited budget. And we didn't. And I was so glad that we didn't, because so many amazing things happened after that. One thing is we changed our business model to mostly focusing on private label manufacturing for companies like Google and PayPal and Jameson Whiskey and Maker's Mark, and manufacturing really cool flavors specifically for them and their product. Think of making popsicles that match all the colors of Google's logo because they want to hand out 5,000 of them, or yellow popsicles with a 10% off sign on the sticker, label on the sticker for Forever 21, which sounded like a really good idea. But they got the popsicles on Friday, and then they were supposed to bring the popsicle stick back on Saturday with to get the 10% off. But you let your clients do what they ask. But just really fun experiences, but then also just being able to experiment through food. So, Tinder approached us to do aphrodisiac popsicles for them. We had a coffee company that wanted us to kind of represent just craziness. Like, I can go on and on forever of Tiger Beat wanting us to superimpose tattoos on the popsicle so when people licked it, the logo would be on their tongue. And like, you know, it's popsicles, but it's just like, it's very random and very fun at the same time. But with building the company, you know, we had some, I would say, lines that we created in the very beginning that we were not willing to cross. One, it was definitely a commitment to just amazing ingredients in the product. Two, wanting to make sure that it was something that always remained fun to myself and my husband and our staff. And then three, you know, entrepreneurship essentially saved myself and my husband because we lost our jobs and we had no other options. People just weren't hiring in 2008. And so because it essentially saved us, we wanted to make sure that we created programs that were in the community that did the exact same thing. And so a portion of every popsicle that we sold allowed us to do programming, like the Poppreneur program that we ran here in Broward when there was a 31% youth unemployment rate, and Mount Olive was just trying to figure out how to keep their kids in their youth ministry active so that the cycle of poverty doesn't continue and they don't see higher teen pregnancy and crime rates and all these things. So entrepreneurship through these ice cream carts that we donated to them allowed them to make money on their own and learn how to be self-sufficient. But I decided to take on investors. And when you talk about the lines that you will not cross and kind of really understanding that and really understanding kind of like ethics and the values and the company culture that you have for your company and kind of going through that process that can sometimes be a very quick process like it was for us, but really wanting to hold on to what we thought was extremely important. But then realizing when you take on money and you take on other people in your company and you know, you think so much about ethics when you think about your employees and the ingredients. But for us, we didn't think about that when it came to partners. And it almost broke us. It almost broke me. And I realized through that process that the reason that I struggled with that is because I was moving so far away from what the values were with my company. You know, what made our company tick, what made people buy our product, what made people just love what we were doing. And because we brought in something that was not in alignment with who we are as myself and my husband as individuals, but then as a company, a lot of things started to happen. And so a lot of things started to happen. And one of the biggest things when we brought on these partners was wanting to kind of compromise on the quality of the ingredients that we were putting in our product. That was a big kind of red flag for us, and that's something that we fought about because, of course, if we use lesser ingredients or conventional ingredients, of course we could bring our numbers down, right? And we can increase our profit margins on our popsicles. We could absolutely do that. But how do you do that 5 years into your business and not lose all your customers? And these were fights that we were having on an ongoing basis because, again, we decided to do something that was not in alignment with the ethos of our company. To take that a step further, you know, company culture is like extremely important. And I think it's extremely important when you talk about startups and when you talk about you personally following your dream. And Dave Chappelle has this interview that I thought was just amazing. It's kind of stuck with me. And I listened to it kind of at the right time when I was going through it with my partners. And it was when he was getting ready to go into Hollywood. His career had just started taking off. And he was having a conversation with his dad because I think he was getting ready to move from the East Coast to the West Coast to like really kind of kickstart his career. And his dad said to him, you need to set a line that you will not cross in order to achieve this goal. And he said it kind of stuck with him for a while because he kind of understood what his dad meant, but then he really didn't at the same time because he just wanted this idea to happen so bad. You know, we wanted amazing growth to happen with our company so bad that you start to compromise in areas that you know in your heart, you know in your gut, you know, it's kind of speaking to you here and then it kind of goes up here and you feel it kind of like in the arch of your back that you shouldn't go down this line, but you do it anyways. So he kept telling him to set a line that you would not cross. And if following your dreams ever got more expensive than that line or that price that you set, you have to get out. And that was the point that we realized that we had to get out of that relationship, because again, we were going against everything that we believed in. And so you have ethics, and then you have kind of like your immutable laws. And I think no matter if you are an entrepreneur, if you're working for someone, that you have to set these immutable laws of what defines you, what excites you, where do your passions lie, and then how far do you want to go before it becomes too expensive, and then you're almost skating that line of compromising some things that you know you should not be compromising. That is kind of weighing on your moral compass of what you know happens to be right or wrong about what you're doing, and really ultimately what the future is going to look like for you, your clients, and the future, essentially the world that you're trying to create. So I got out of that partnership that wasn't pretty. I had a store in the Midtown Shops, and the store was a part of the partnership. And we started to get out of that partnership and close that store. During this craziness, I happened to be pregnant with my daughter, who's now 2 years old. So a month after closing that store, I ended up going into labor 3 months early because of all the stress. And again, going against what I knew I shouldn't have been going through, and extending that for much longer because I was just trying to, again, compromise. And to make a long story short, her name's Ori. She's doing fantastic. She's all over the place. But I learned probably one of the best lessons about myself, and like how to move forward and kind of how to pick up the pieces as a startup. Because I think so often we talk about raising money. We talk about, growth and scalability and total world domination. And, we don't talk about what it looks like after the term sheet. We don't talk about putting, again, in those immutable laws as it relates to the partners and even the vendors and the staff that we bring in. And I think as an entrepreneur, it can be a very isolating experience, because a lot of times most people don't know what you're going through. Or most people don't tell the true story, so when it does happen to you, you realize that it's a part of the process and you just have to trust the process. And so I went into labor 3 months early with Ori, sitting in a hospital in the middle of litigation with with partners, trying to save my company and actually be able to get it back. And literally being in the hospital for 2 weeks, and then being in the hospital for the next 4 months because my daughter was in the NICU. And something that happened to me just really stuck with me, and I try to share this story wherever I go, is the first night I'm sitting in the NICU, and there's just all these bells and whistles going on. It's a completely foreign environment to me. And the neonatologist told myself and my husband to go in there as much as we can, because they didn't think that she was going to make it through the night. She was born at 1.4 pounds. And I go in there, I'm sitting there, I'm looking at, her inside this incubator, just not ever imagining this, because all I could think of was like what I'm going through trying to save my company, and not willing to compromise anymore for something that I truly believed in. And this nurse runs by, and my mom's from Jamaica, and the lady reminded me of my mom, and she was just like, "Is that a girl?" I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh, she's gonna be fine." And she runs off, right? And I'm like, "Wait, what? What's going on? What are you talking about?" Because the neonatologist told me that, 1% chance. It's just not. And so night 2, I'm sitting there again, and she walks by, and she's asked me the same question, "Is that a girl?" And I'm like, "Yes." And she's like, "Oh, she'll be fine." And I'm like, "No, you need to come back here and tell me why you think that she's going to be okay." And she's like, "I've been a neonatologist for the past 20-something years. And what I know, and no offense to the guys, is that women outperform men when they're born premature. They have higher life expectancy rates." And she's like, "So she's gonna be just fine." And it took me a full week to process exactly what she meant by that. And so when I looked at it, I'm like, okay, when you come into this world and you're literally one of the smallest persons on this earth, 1.4 pounds, you literally have every single card stacked against you. Every single card. You know, life expectancy rate of 1%. Something with us women that's built internally shows us that we are like built like forward tough, right? And that we have a survival mechanism in us before we can even say our first word or take our first step. There's something in us. And as traumatic as that experience was for me, I needed that lesson that would not have happened if I didn't go through it, the craziness with my investors that stressed me out and landed me in the hospital. And I needed that lesson to pick up the pieces in order to keep going as an entrepreneur. But then also be able to share that story with other people that we have everything that we need in us. We have an internal moral compass that tells us what's right and what's wrong. And especially as women, we feel it in our bodies, right? We have that intuition that for whatever reason, we choose to ignore. And when I look back on the experience, that first dinner that I had with my partners, I felt it, but I decided to ignore it. I felt it, but I decided to ignore it. And I ended up compromising things that I knew in the bottom of my heart I should not have compromised, because I had this big vision and I felt that they were a necessary piece to the puzzle, and it wasn't. I had everything in me that I needed to succeed. We started, I sold the company last year, Feverish Pops, and it was a great experience to be able to build something up and then to be able to sell it to a company that I believe in. Right after we got out of litigation and everything with our partners and started building Feverish back up, we decided to start a program called Code Fever. And it's our entrepreneurship and technology program. And it was a way for us to kind of pour into our community and make sure that it is reflective, our ecosystem is reflective of everyone that's here in South Florida. So when you talk about startups, and what I find is some interesting things that are happening when you talk about kind of like ethics as it relates to kind of innovation and diversity and the innovation economy and like all these things is if anyone's familiar with like K4 Capital, they actually just made all of their startups that are in their portfolio essentially sign a code of ethics to make sure that they are the ones that are kind of leading by example of what it means to have inclusive startups as we move forward. And I thought that was interesting, and I really truly hope that's actually a trend that we start to see moving forward as we are building these businesses, that we make sure that there are more women that are a part of the business. We make sure that there are more African Americans and Hispanics and Asians, and it's a representation of our awesome culture that we have, and that allows us to build a culture that allows us to not alienate and marginalize groups because they are at the table. And they help us in building our tables for our companies. I think it's extremely important. What I struggle with Code Fever a lot of times is people just not understanding it, or understanding what we're doing, or understanding why it's important to have a diverse workforce. And I realize that we all need to be a little bit more comfortable being uncomfortable. And if we aren't familiar with a certain community, reach out and connect and find someone that can connect us to be that connection point, so that we now have these collision points for innovation. It's not so hard for us to do, but I think as human beings, sometimes we just make things a little bit more difficult than they really have to be. But we have some amazing genius in our community with just the right resources can transform. And I truly believe from the bottom of my heart, they will transform this world. And it's not so much looking at it from a charity standpoint as I think a lot of people do when you talk about diversity and inclusion, and when you talk about that in business. It's really looking at it from a compassionate standpoint. So there's a difference between charity and there's a difference between compassion. And so charity is, You know, in November during Thanksgiving, we're gonna go load up a truck full of turkeys and we're gonna give everyone a turkey. They're gonna cook that turkey on Thanksgiving and they're gonna be hungry the next day. So what did you really do at the end of the day, right? But if you are compassionate, and that's one of your immutable laws for your company, and you have a commitment to making sure that what you're doing is inclusive, how to add value to whatever situation that they walk into, how to apply the knowledge that they are learning so that it really impacts your bottom line. You know, diversity, again, is not a charity case. It is economic development. It is definitely adding to the bottom line, because then you build better products, you build better companies, and then we, in turn, build better communities. So thank you guys so much for having me. Hopefully I didn't make you like, tear up or anything. I think we have any questions for anybody? No?
What was the
Okay.
name of the company that created a code of ethics?
Cape Or Capital. Cape Or Capital? Yeah, they're out of the Bay Area. Mitch and Rita Cape Or, yeah. Founder of Lotus, yes. And so they have Cape Or Capital, and then they have Cape Or Center for Social Change as well.
On the technology side of coding fever, what languages and platforms do you teach?
So we do full stack development. So our youth programs, we start with HTML, CSS, and a little bit of Java. And then we worked with an organization called Ecotech Visions out of Miami and we launched an adult pilot program last year. And that program was just fantastic. I mean, we had over 100 applicants. We could only accept 20. And you know, these were guys that just had just a varying degree of backgrounds, you know, from high school dropouts to some had criminal records, to some were college students and college graduates that were looking to figure out how to get and kind of pave their lane in technology. And these are guys in Liberty City that have been overlooked as part of the technology ecosystem. And with a little bit of training, with a little bit of support, they are now active participants. Like, they're showing up at startup events and they're pitching their ideas. We had our graduation at the Facebook office in Miami. They had no idea that there was a Facebook office in Miami, just none. And now, again, it just kind of opened up their possibilities of, one, what they personally can do, but then how they see Miami and the capabilities that we have in Miami, so that we can essentially retain the talent that we have here. You know, if we have and we're producing people with vision, then we have a better community here, because it's much stronger. I played basketball for a long time, and my basketball coach used to always say, you're only as strong as your weakest player. And that's how we have to look at our community. We have to make sure that we are engaging our weakest player. And when we talk about coding, I think so often it just only focuses on youth. And I think that's great. And of course, it sounds really sexy to say, hey, we're a company and we're gonna sponsor this youth program. But we have adults that can essentially apply that knowledge much faster and enter the workforce much faster with just a little bit of training and a little bit of support. And so we have to make sure that as we talk about training our youth in STEM fields, that we don't forget about a huge adult population that we have here that can just contribute much faster. Yeah.
Yeah, Felicia, you know, in these underserved communities, we're finding we're farming a lot of would-be entrepreneurs and so forth, as sort of like a first wave of trying to bring people or establish some sort of economic platform in these communities. And then what you're doing is like teaching people, you're over the top, looking kind of down. Is there a lot of effort to try to link the two communities together so that there can be an application or you know, an application of the entrepreneurship that we're teaching people, or an application of the innovation and coding that you're teaching?
Absolutely. So I don't think you can teach one without the other. Okay. I don't think that you can have a coding program that does not teach people how to monetize their skills. That's the reason we're literally in the trouble that we're in as an economy now. Right. That's why the economy tanked in 2008. Right. You looked at all the college students that graduated with a liberal arts degree and then was like, oh shit, like I don't know how to put two pennies together with this degree that I have and I can't find a job. So if we now have these accelerated platforms that allow us to essentially acquire knowledge in a shorter period of time, but then we're not then teaching these people like, hey, if you can't find a job, you should at least be able to do 5 things that help you pay your bills until you get to that point, or 5 things and 5 ideas that you have at all times that can put money in your pocket and then probably turn into a scalable and fundable business. But we're not taught that, and that's a problem. And so our approach is that approach. As they learn how to code, they're also learning how to monetize their skills, and that way we create more people that are self-sufficient. I don't think that you can do it any other way and be able to have any kind of success story. I think that's extremely important. So I think to what you were saying, Phil, you have a lot of grassroots organizations that are doing this work, but you also need a top-down approach from organizations that know that they have issues in the hiring pipeline. They know that it's not diverse enough. They know that they don't have enough women. They don't have enough Hispanics. They don't have enough African Americans in the pipeline, but they know exactly the talent that they need. And that's why pattern matching exists. But you can create the patterns that you need if you actually tell these grassroots organizations, this is exactly what we need if you want to work at Google. This is exactly what you need if you want to work at Magic Leap. But the connection point is not happening in the middle. And once that does, then you start to see those numbers increase. Okay.
When and where is Black Tech Week happening?
Okay, I didn't even talk about Black Tech Week. So it's all of next week. It starts it starts on Monday and it goes through Saturday. So the first part so the way Black Tech Week works is our team has some core programming that we do, and then we just have amazing programming partners that are doing events as well. So to kick off the week, we have a partnership with Power Moves, which is a high growth accelerator for minority startups. They start their boot camp, an early stage and a Series A boot camp that starts at the Fontainebleau on Monday. That night we have a joint event called the Disruptors Showcase. So I keep telling people if like Lil Wayne can party at Live on Monday, then like disruptive entrepreneurs can showcase. If Lil Wayne can party at Live on Sunday, then disruptive startup founders can present at Club Live on Monday. And so these are like 5 companies that are just doing some amazing work. You have Brian Barkeen, who I'm sure some of you guys know, who has his facial recognition company. He's presenting. You have Rodney Williams, who is the founder of a company called Listener that just raised like $14 million in his Series B round, I think. And instead of connecting our devices through wireless and Bluetooth, his platform allows you to connect through sound. And he's just doing some really amazing stuff. You have Byram Sock, who's also based here in Miami with Voom Media. And if she continues on the right track, she can easily be major competition to YouTube. And so they're all presenting their disruptive startups that night in Miami, and then open bar and free food. So like literally everybody is welcome. Tuesday we have our opening reception at the Adrian Art Center, and then our actual conference starts on Wednesday, and that's at FIU North Campus. And then there's just a ton of social and really cool events as well. So you have Thursday night, Digital Grass is doing an event at building.co called Spirits and Bites, right? Spirits and Bites. That's a really cool event from 7 to 9 o'clock. 6:30 to 9 o'clock. We have Walker Legacy, which is a women's collective out of Austin that's powered by Google, that's doing some programming around women in innovation, women in tech, and then of course like being able to kind of protect your IP as well. And I'm probably missing like a ton of stuff, but it's all on our site. The Women's Innovation Brunch on Saturday. We have Catherine Finney, who was the founder of the Budget Fashionista and then started the Digital Undivided, that's doing just some fantastic work around getting women VC funding. They did an interesting study last year that they actually just released this week, so it's like great timing to have her here next week. And so on average, African American women that are startup founders only raise about $36,000 in VC funding on average. And that's insane. because some of these companies are groundbreaking, but they're not able to kind of connect the dots from a resource standpoint. So she's going to be able to share that. But Jeff Hoffman, the founder of Priceline, is one of our keynote speakers during that week. We have Chinedu Ochero, who started HopStop, that sold to Apple for $1 billion, just ridiculous. He's one of our keynote speakers that week as well. We have Frederick Hudson, the founder of Pigeonly, which is just this really insane application that kind of connects people and their families to people that are in prison. And he has this algorithm that at any time can identify where prisoners are at all time, which for most families that have people that are incarcerated, they're moved around so much that they never know where their families are, and there's a big disconnection that happens. But go on the site, we have like 50-something speakers, all just badasses, and I literally welcome anyone to come that week, help us celebrate innovators of color. But if you're looking to raise VC funding, if you're looking to find a co-founder, if you're looking to find a mentor, that week is where you need to be. Dream It Ventures, who's Comcast's venture fund, William Crowler is also there. It's just an amazing, amazing lineup. So if you want to use the code BTW Community 25, that will get you 25% off either the week pass or a day pass. So guys, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
I'll see you then for March. Stick to our newsletter, and actually the next topic is going to be change. That's going to be interesting as well. So keep it up, and thanks for coming, guys.